Welcome back to the channel. Absolutely thrilled to be joined once again by our automotive consultant, Russ Bolton, who works for one of the world's leading leasing companies. Welcome back to the channel, Russ. Thanks so much for joining us again. And today, I wanted us to talk about the recent reports in the press that a lot of people will have seen, particularly those who follow Tesla and the world of Tesla and the world of EVs. But Reuters, the online media piece, has declared that Teslas have fallen 17, used Teslas in particular, have fallen 17% since July in terms of their relative value. Now, this is quite a large amount of money. And if you've invested substantially in a Tesla, much like myself, that might be quite alarming to think that where you could once buy a car and be relatively satisfied when I purchased my car, but the value of it was not going to decrease significantly. And actually, you were making an investment, but your investment would not depreciate at a huge amount. People are out there saying the Tesla bubble has popped, the value of cars is decreasing, and actually even saying you shouldn't be putting your money into an EV in 2023. What do you think?
Well,
the smirk says it all, really.
This is again, this is all my opinion. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is not anything work related. This is purely my opinion. I think this article specifically, and a lot of articles that you see, are written by journalists that are commenting from a particular angle. They don't necessarily understand the automotive industry. So it's very easy to look at all of the thousands of models that are out there in the secondhand market being sold, look at the average, and then pull out one vehicle and look at a Tesla and go, look how far away it is from the average. What's not been, in my eyes in this article, it's not been very good, is that what they've done is they've compared the whole market versus Tesla now, or probably one model. It might be, and again, I haven't seen the exact details in this just yet, but I can't see within any of the graphs that are in this article whether or not this is, as an example, a standard range Tesla. Now, it might be that the standard range Tesla does have has dropped, and that might be because the market is getting a little bit more tuned in to the idea that actually some people are going to go for the long range and see that there's more value in that one. Mm-hmm. So it might be an exception like that. The data within this article isn't really clear enough in my eyes, and I feel like it's a little bit sensationalized in order to really start saying, oh, there's a major issue with the biggest EV producer, and look how negative it is from an EV point of view, and this is indicative of all EVs. A lot of the figures and the graphs that you see in there, it looks at the average, and that includes a lot of ICE, which the average, obviously the sale prices for ICE is going to be a little bit more stable at the moment because it's the known product, it's the known market. But realistically, this last couple of years have been crazy when it comes to secondhand car prices. So if you're trying to, and again, there's a lot of people that I know that are way better qualified to talk about residual values than I am, because that is their day in, day out job. Mm-hmm. But realistically, I do get involved in it quite significantly because it has quite a big bearing on a lot of our customers and what that impact will be for their rentals as well. But it's been a mental market. There's no doubt about it. So you're going to see fluctuations. You'll see certain other models might drop by 20% over a quarter because suddenly something changes. But that could be on internal combustion engines as well, and that might be because of a trim level change or a spec level change. RVs can be very, very volatile, and it's a big challenge to try and understand exactly what's making that. It could be that an auction house has a particular glut of vehicles. Could it be that Tesla, they suddenly had a load of vehicles come off contract that they then needed to move, and as a result, there's too many vehicles, which is potentially to sell, which is potentially reduce that value down as well. It's very easy to pull out to look at the data and pull out these exceptions and say, oh, this is really bad news for Tesla. In my eyes, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. I don't know if that's fair to say, Cliff.
Yeah. No, I think it is a sensationalized headline, isn't it? 17% off the value of your car. But would you agree that actually the days of flipping a Tesla, and there were a lot of people who sort of in mid 2022 were getting cars allocated to them and then actually saying, you know what? The value that I can get back for this car is more than I've paid for it, and actually that no longer makes it an incentive for me to own that car anymore. I am prepared to sell it. And they sold it for thousands of pounds more because of the supply demand situation. And therefore, you are going to see a 17% decrease potentially because people were paying an inflated price to own a Tesla.
Exactly. And that is the point. If you're comparing it, I mean, COVID, the supply, the semiconductor crisis, all of these issues that came at the same time created this very, very unusual bubble where, I mean, we did it ourselves. We looked at my missus's car and we were like, this is going to cost us hardly anything to get out of this vehicle and order a new vehicle. It was not seen before. It's very easy to look for a sensationalized statement when you're comparing to this exception, and the market was an absolute exception. So yeah, we are going to see prices looking like they drop, but realistically, what they're doing is they're just coming back to a more normal kind of level. And what we see when you pan out of these graphs, you'll see that yes, there's a bubble, there's a spike. But that was for a limited period because of what was going on in the market at the time. And as we start to see supply coming back in and being a bit more standardized, we'll start seeing it started to level out. But yeah, at the moment, we're seeing the knock-on effect of some very exceptional situations.
So if you own a Tesla, what do you think realistically? There you go. Take myself, for example, own a 2021 Tesla Model 3. Realistically, okay, so we're saying 17% we think is sensationalized. What are the residual values we're starting to see in those cars? And actually, realistically, what is my car going to be worth at 3 years of age? And now we're starting to see Teslas on the market coming to that age. Those early adopters are getting to the point where they're changing either out of their lease or wanting to sell their car on and get a newer model.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of answers to that, I suppose. It all depends on the condition, how well you looked after the vehicle, the kind of mileage. There's so many different for residual value to be calculated. There's so many different factors that need to be considered. What I would say is that the reason that a lot of people aren't in Teslas at the moment that actually want to be in is because the cost is maybe prohibitive. So I think we will. It's very much, to compare it to another vehicle, I suppose. I mean, if you remember looking at the minis were exceptionally popular and had a really good residual value because, when you look at it, people wanted into those vehicles, but they couldn't afford to go brand new. So as a result, a 3-year-old Mini still really held its value. I still believe that Tesla is going to be in a very similar position because the capital cost to purchase a brand new Tesla is significant. So there's still this demand. It's just that that's prohibitive. So we will end up seeing it. So I'll be honest, I'm not gonna give you an exact figure because there's so many different factors that can give you that. But you're still in a position where the market and the industry is going electric, and there's no doubt about that. It's something that we see as a lease co. The amount of electric vehicles, yes, cars wise, it's getting a lot higher, but it's still not it's not the whole market is electric now. So if you've got vehicles that are early, if you're maybe an earlier adopter, there's still going to be a demand for electric vehicles, and there's always going to be. And the problem is at the moment, electric vehicles are more expensive. So the secondhand market for electric vehicles we see as a very positive place because essentially people want in, but that's the kind of level that they'll be able to get in in the secondhand market. And for the amount of vehicles that were sold 2 years ago, as an example, the demand and the availability of those vehicles is going to be restricted in comparison. So there's not going to be as many electric secondhand vehicles at 3 years old at the moment on the market that in comparison to what people want. Now, or as much as they want to get into those vehicles. Now, the flip side of that is there's a lot of people in electric vehicles that will run the vehicles for longer. So that also helps quite significantly with the supply and demand side. So people want to get into a 3-year-old Tesla, but what if you've got a Tesla? Why would you want to get out of a Tesla at 3 years old unless you really had been putting the high mileage on, or you'd be really going to town on it? Realistically, if you've done quite low mileage and you're getting those over-the-air updates and you've looked after your vehicle, you've still got an up-to-date Tesla. So there's a really strong argument that actually, why would you get out after 3 years? And actually, let's sweat the asset a little bit more and stay in that vehicle and get a bit more value for money out of it before you start making that next move, which in turn will then have a positive effect on the market, because those looking for a 3-year-old Tesla, because they think there's not as many of that because they're holding on to them as longer. So it is not, there's no kind of magic wand to kind of say this is what the value of your Tesla will be. But what I would say is that understanding the way that the market is, the demand for electric vehicles is high. Tesla is a brand that people do see as a very good electric vehicle brand. And essentially what you also have is you have the stats that come with a Tesla that actually really perform. So we've said before, but the miles per kilowatt, the efficiency of those vehicles, the tech that comes with those vehicles as well, that is all going to be stuff that is still going to be very appealing to the secondhand market.
So, okay, so we talked second-hand market there. New cars, though, I mean, you've just talked about the positives and the selling points, the unique selling points of the Tesla. But there are a whole array of EVs out there, more and more manufacturers bringing EVs to market. So is Tesla still the standout EV? Or are there others that you, in your professional capacity, would be recommending to people? Can I put you on the spot with that? I mean, and yourself, would you buy a Tesla next, or would you buy another manufacturer?
Now, I'm going to have to smirk at this one because that we've had a bit of a conversation about this. So I'll be honest, I'm not in a Tesla. I'm in an EV, but I'm not in a Tesla.
Yeah.
I love my car, but it doesn't necessarily fit my journey profiles in the way that I wanted it to. And that's because the range is can be limited, and especially winter. That's when I did my calculations probably based on a bit too optimistic, and I was kind of looking at everything from a best case scenario. Then when it got to winter, I was like, okay, that has a bigger impact. So my dependency on the public charging network is relatively high as a result, which is potentially a factor to want to come out of the car that I'm in at the moment. A Tesla stacks up exceptionally well for me from a journey profile. Now, a lot of my journeys are motorway journeys, they're quite high mileage, and a Tesla Model Y probably would actually work really well for me, because it would mean that I would be way less dependent on the public charging network. I'd probably be able to do most of my journeys there and back and charge 100% at home. So that would make a big difference. Whereas at the moment, I'm exposed to probably needing another 40% of charge on the public charging network, which obviously does start to really rack up. So there are other vehicles out there, and there are some vehicles that are coming to market that have got fantastic range. It comes down to preference, though. Now, personally, don't get me wrong, I really, really like Tesla. I think they are fantastic vehicles, but they're not quite for me on the interior side. I'm maybe a little bit more traditional, kind of quite like the Merc kind of feel to it. There's, I don't know, maybe a bit more going on in that sense.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the great thing about choice, though, isn't it? And other manufacturers bringing more cars to market, because actually it gives the customer that choice. So, well, actually, I'm not all for just a touch screen. Actually, I want some of the buttons, and I want some of the luxury materials that you might not find. I mean, I'm not downplaying, Tesla has got some nice materials in it, all renewable as well, I hasten to add. Okay. But it isn't for everyone. So it's interesting, though. And I suppose I also ask that from that value perspective. Do the Teslas hold their value more than the others? Or actually, is that not a thing for people to worry about if they're thinking of getting into an EV?
Do you know, it's a really good, and again, like I said, there's probably more people, there are other people out there that would be more qualified to talk specifically about RVs. But again, in my opinion, I think Tesla is a very good choice because you have got this public charging network that is exceptional. If you're a Tesla driver, you've got access to all of the chargers that everybody else does, plus you've got your own dedicated network, which granted there's talk about that opening up a little bit more, and that's fine. But that Tesla supercharger network really can make a big difference for those that are doing higher mileage. But you might be in a position where you've got really low mileage profile. So you might, I know somebody recently that has really low daily mileage. She's gone for a Mini. She's gone for a Mini electric. I think it's got a range of about 100 miles. It's hardly anything, but that works really, really well for her.
You can just plug in when you get home.
Exactly, and she's never going to be pushing the limits of her range. So I think, again, it's not a clear-cut answer, but I think you have to have you have to be quite open-minded, and you have to understand how you're going to use that vehicle to be able to make a decision on which vehicle is going to be most suitable for you. If you're all in town driving, Teslas aren't necessarily the vehicle for you, because you might be just paying for a range, or you might be paying for a size of vehicle that is maybe just a little bit too much. You don't necessarily need it. If you're in the town, you might look at a lot smaller EV with a lower range and not really worry about it. Conversely, you might end up looking at it and say, but I need quite a big car. And you might look at Model 3 and go, that's not quite practical enough. And there are other options out there. You start looking at like the Hyundais of the world, and the Kia models. Some of those vehicles are phenomenal when you look at the performance of it. You start looking at the practicality of it as well. And dare I say it, some of the styling is actually, really quite nice. And yeah, luckily we've got a lot of other manufacturers that are coming to the party now. If you're looking at a comparison to Tesla, I've got to say the i4, the BMW i4 is quite an impressive bit of kit. And some of the entry level kind of spec and the prices and the efficiency again is really good out of those vehicles. So you're getting a decent range, you're getting good performance, and there. So it's about understanding, and I think for me, biggest ones are miles per kilowatt, understanding what that is, looking at your range, not getting too twisted about having a range of 300 miles if you only do a 300-mile journey once a year. Don't panic. That's fine. You can use a public charging network. There is a network out there. But yeah, but look, crucially, again, it comes back to not overcomplicating it, but when you would look at an internal combustion engine vehicle, do I like this car? Does it tick all the boxes? Does it have the tech? Does it look nice? And crucially, if you're going to look at the difference between an internal combustion engine vehicle and an electric, understand what the miles per kilowatt is and look at what kind of range you actually need rather than what you would love to have. If everyone would love to have, a lot of people say, the barrier for me is, I need a 400-mile range. There's not many cars, that unless they're exceptionally efficient with a huge, fuel tank that could do 400 miles without stopping. So, there's ways around that. And a lot of the people that say that, they'll do 400 miles once a year. And that's the reason apparently why they can't transition.
And I always challenge people to go more than 150 miles without needing to pull over for a coffee, stretch your legs, use the toilet, whatever it may be. After 150 miles, I suggest people most need to stop for 10 to 15 minutes in any case, in those sorts of journeys. Look, exactly. Ross, thank you so much for your time. Ross Bolton, automotive consultant for one of the world's leading leasing companies. We will see you, no doubt, again on the channel very, very soon.
There you go, that's the view from our leading leasing automotive expert, Ross Bolton. If you haven't, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. If you like this video, don't forget you can follow the rest of the podcast by clicking the links on screen now. And until next time, thanks for watching.